if you are a parent with kids abroad for NRIs, should you be having any real estate at all? Real estate broker who has sold off all his properties, stays on rent.
He saw a lot of NRI clients of his who were struggling to manage their real estate properties.
There are two major tax disadvantages that NRIs face when they own real estate in India. So even if you have 100 rupees of rent, your tenant has to deduct TDS, and that TDS is deducted on the sale value, not on the capital gain. So it's not the rate that's the problem. The rate is the same for residents also. It's just that it's deducted on the entire sale amount, not just on the gain. The other thing that you have to deal with as an NRI is actually managing the property, because somebody has to look after everything from collecting the rents, making sure that the rent is coming on time, to maintaining the property if the paint is peeling, and you depend on the kindness of your family to run the house for you, which may not be feasible in all cases. I mean, if you're living in the US and you're earning in dollars, the rupee is losing its value, so your rent is actually coming down in real terms. So essentially, inheriting real estate, if you're an NRI, and managing it is a huge pain. Welcome to Moneynomics with Mint. Today we're going to ask a very provocative question, that if you are a parent with kids abroad for NRIs, should you be having any real estate at all? And this question stems from an article that my colleague Anil Poste has done, an interview that he had with a real estate broker of all people, real estate broker who has sold off all his properties, stays on rent, and has this firm belief, because his kids stay abroad, that he should not be owning any property. So we'll get into the depth of why this argument was made, and we'll talk about some reasons why we might agree with him. So Anil, you want to tell us about this guy's story?
So we visited this person who happens to be a real estate broker and has been in real estate since more than about 20 years now. Early 2000s he started his career, and there was a point where in his life where his son went to US for education and he ended up settling down there. And while he was doing his real estate business, he saw a lot of NRI clients of his who were struggling to manage their real estate properties. And some of his NRI clients who wanted to just sell the property once they've made the gain, they found a lot of hassle to do that, because we'll come to the part what are the tax related hassles there. And here's why he finally made a decision in 2006 that he will no more own a real estate or any kind of property, and has been sticking to FDs and golds. I somehow tried to convince him to, you can just maybe try mutual funds as well, but it's late.
Let's not get
hopefully
at some point.
So he's not owned any property since then, and since then he believes that for NRIs, for elderly parents who have the children abroad in NRI and are NRI, for them it does not make sense to own a real estate. And let's get to the tax hurdles.
Yes. So there are two major tax disadvantages that NRIs face when they own real estate in India. The first is when they rent out the property, the tenant has to deduct TDS at the highest slab rate, which is 30% plus surcharge plus cess, even if the rental amount is very low. So normally there is no TDS on rental income unless the monthly rent exceeds 50,000 rupees. But for NRIs, there is no such threshold. So even if you have 100 rupees of rent, your tenant has to deduct TDS. And to claim it back, I mean, if you don't have that much tax liability, then you have to file the income tax return, and then you get your refund. So it is a lot of paperwork that you have to deal with as the landlord, as the NRI landlord. The second thing that happens is when you go to sell the property, again TDS applies, and that TDS is deducted on the sale value, not on the capital gain. So let's assume that you have a 1 crore house which became 2 crores or 2.5 crores, right? So your 1.5 crores is your gain.
Right.
But the income tax department has essentially ensured that people deduct TDS on the entire sale value.
For the buyer. This is a pain for the buyer.
Yeah, it's a pain for the buyer, pain for the seller also, because his money is gone to the government straight away. He has to wait until he files the ITR to claim a refund. And again, if you're an NRI, then filing an ITR in India is difficult. You have to come all the way or hire somebody. It's a pain. And the deduction rate, of course, now is 12.5% long-term capital gains, assuming that you've held it for at least 2 years, which in most cases
Yeah.
would be the case. So it's not the rate that's the problem. The rate is the same for residents also. It's just that it's deducted on the entire sale amount, not just on the gain.
The gain.
Now there is a solution to it that, in theory, the NRI can submit a
Form 13, yeah.
Form 13 to the income tax department and get a sort of authorization from the income tax department allowing the buyer to deduct less tax. But that also involves a lot of paperwork. You have
Right.
to hire a CA and get
Right.
all of that done.
It's not straightforward. Like you have
It's
to
not.
wait, and the officer, if he's kind enough to you, he will
Yeah.
approve it. And
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that is
yeah.
a hassle.
Yeah,
it
it
may
can-
take up to 6 months according to CS.
Correct. So it is quite a large hassle. The other thing that you have to deal with as an NRI is actually managing the property, because somebody has to look after everything from collecting the rents, making sure that the rent is coming on time, to maintaining the property. If the paint is peeling off, it has to be painted, security, like hundreds of things that go into
Right.
actually running a property. And the way it is generally done is that you give a power of attorney to
To
somebody
someone, yeah.
in your family, and you depend on the kindness of your family to run the house for you, which may not be feasible in all cases. Now, unfortunately, you can't do this through a professional. Like, are you going to be comfortable giving a power of attorney on your bank account to, let's say, an agent
Or a real estate broker or something.
or a broker or anyone, right? That's almost never happens. So that's another added complication to this whole thing.
Right.
Apart from this, of course, you have to figure out which account you're going to have in India. Is it going to be NRE or NRO?
Right.
That itself involves a bunch of paperwork. So
Right.
so essentially, inheriting real estate, if you're an NRI, and managing it is a huge pain. And this guy had the enormous foresight.
Yep.
To
Yeah.
just make life easy for his son to
Right.
not have property. Any other takeaway?
Yes, another concern that this broker raised was the currency depreciation. So from 2003 to 2023, the rupee has depreciated almost 90%, 88%. So 45 was something rupee was trading against the dollar in 2003. Now it's almost 85, almost 84. So something he said to take and I should take into consideration before they, and considering the lower rental yields on the residential properties. Of course, commercial, it's slightly on the higher side, but the capital gain is not that attractive to bear that currency depreciation and all of that. So this is one of the concerns that he raised.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're living in the US and you're earning in dollars, the rupee is losing its value, so your rent is actually coming down
Right.
in real terms. Another thing that just to go in a bit more detail, so typically the rent will be received into the NRO account, and to move it to the NRE account, you need a certificate from the CA, 15 CACB, and then only you can repatriate it, move it abroad.
Right.
So again, yet more paperwork, yet more hassles.
The same problem happens when the NRI finally finds a buyer and the buyer has to pay the money to NRO account. And so let's say the money has come to NRO account, he has made the payment. To repatriate this huge amount to back to your country is again a lot of hassle, and
Again, you have to get that certificate and
Yeah, correct.
it-
To show that it's the clean money, and
yes,
after paying all the taxes, you're repatriating the money back.
That's right.
Correct.
That's right. So it is a lot of hassle. So maybe parents around India will increasingly adopt this approach because in many cases the property may be less of a gift and more of a burden
Mm,
for kids who are going to stay abroad their entire life.
right.
One other interesting point that happened in this budget is the change in the long-term capital gains tax.
Right.
So earlier it was 20% with benefit of indexation. So indexation is this concept which increases your purchase cost in line with inflation, roughly in line with inflation, not exactly that much, but a little bit less than that. And essentially it allows you to reduce the tax burden that's there on the property. Now in this budget, budget 24, the finance minister got rid of that entire concept, and she replaced the previous long-term capital gains tax of 20% with indexation with 12.5% without indexation.
Correct.
There was a lot of pushback, a lot of hue and cry, because for houses that were slowly appreciating, normally less than 10%, actually this change in taxation represents a jump in tax, because indexation was earlier actually reducing the tax burden quite a bit. So in response to that hue and cry, the finance minister gave an option to resident Indians that you can either choose the old system of 20% with indexation or the new system of 12.5%. If you have purchased a property before the budget was actually passed in
Right.
July of 24. But she did not give this option to NRIs. So NRIs forcibly have to do it under the new system of 12.5%. Indexation as a concept is gone for them.
Right.
Any final takeaways?
Yes.
Navin?
So some of the key takeaways from this real estate broker is that if you are an elderly parent and if you have a children who is studying or working abroad and has no plans to come back to India, you better keep your assets in more liquid form. Otherwise, it will be a huge hassle transferring the asset back to your children and again selling it if they have no plans to come back. So that was it. And yes,
All right. Thank you.
thank you.